Here, here. Social distance.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get started. Morning, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the town of New Canaan, Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. This is a hybrid meeting, so do we have anybody on hybridly?
Bonnie Rumley.
Okay. And first item on the agenda are minutes of the last meeting on April 19th, which I did not attend. Any comments or corrections on the minutes?
None here.
Not here.
Motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Second here.
all in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain. Public comments. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments to the Board of Selectmen on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. Comments submitted electronically should be sent to the email address bosdistribution@newcanaanct.gov, and Tucker will read them in the course of the meeting or before the end of the meeting. First, next item on the agenda is the ambulance sharing agreement. Who's presenting this? Bonnie. That's why Bonnie's on.
Yeah.
Bonnie.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for letting me join remotely. I'm on duty. So just to give a little color on the ambulance sharing agreement, we've been doing this for decades. We've had basically a gentleman's agreement with the area surrounding towns, Wilton, Norwalk, where if one of us has an ambulance that goes out of service, we have historically lent one to each other. So we did this back in the fall, and we all kind of stumbled upon the fact that we had lent an ambulance to Westport, and their attorneys had come upon the fact that there was no agreement on paper. So that's how everything began. And we're very much in favor of the ambulance sharing agreement because it will allow us from this day forward with Westport, and then we're hoping that this will be a prototype for the other towns and services, that if we need to share an ambulance or lend one, we will be able to do that and be covered liability wise. The other point that I'd want to make is that we never leave the town uncovered. So we have 3 ambulances in town. And if, let's say, we were down to 2 for some reason, we would never leave us uncovered. Okay, so I just want the people listening to understand that. We'd always have full coverage for the town, but this is just if Wilton calls and says, I'm down to 1 ambulance today, my second is broken, can I borrow this? We'd like to be able to do that and vice versa.
Questions for Bonnie?
So, Bonnie, this is just between us and Westport,
Yes.
but there's a gentleman's or ladies' agreement between the other towns. And us.
We have done it in the past with Norwalk Hospital, which is our sponsor hospital and where we get the paramedics from. We've also shared a vehicle with Wilton in the past. I'm not sure if we've ever done it with Darien, but I think what's great about the Westport agreement is it could be used as a prototype. So we could take that agreement to Norwalk Hospital and say, let's have an agreement between us now that we could share if need be between Norwalk EMS and New Canaan EMS.
Yeah, that was the point. That this is a one-off with Westport because Westport lawyers got concerned as
That's
lawyers
right.
from time to time. But we might be able to implement this with other towns and hospitals.
Yeah, that's what I think would be great if we could use it as a prototype to do that.
Great, thank you.
Bonnie,
Yeah.
how many times in the last year have we done a loan, or either we've loaned to any other town or we've borrowed?
Really once. It was actually a fly car that we loaned at one point this year, and then one point the ambulance, which was back in, I think, September, October, which is what sparked this.
And are they usually just like an overnight loaner, or is it over several days?
I would say 1 to 3 days is the average. It depends what's wrong with the ambulance, how far it needs to go, how long it takes to fix it. Supply chain issues, of course, come into play with this at this point in time. But typically the ambulance companies, they know what we do, right? So they want to get the ambulances back to us as quickly as possible. So I would say 1 to 3 days. It's a little bit rare for it to go beyond that, but that would probably be a transmission issue or a bigger. We're at an advantage in town because we have 3 ambulances,
Right.
which is great.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
And I would just note that this is easy because Westport and New Canaan share the same law firm as town attorney. And also, I think there's 160 towns and cities in Connecticut that share the same mutual insurance company called Kerma. So this is kind of an insurance issue that we want to make sure that we're the lender or the borrower, that you're not liable for a machine that doesn't work. So anyway, so I also would note having personal experience with the Stanford Hospital backing us up 2 weeks ago. It's great what Bonnie and her team of angels, I call them, do to show up and get us to the hospital quickly. So with that, I would move we approve this agreement as explained by Bonnie.
Second.
Second, further discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bonnie, thank you for your service.
Thank you all. And thank you, Kevin. I'm happy that you're doing okay.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you. Now next item is the New Canaan Library Project update from Lisa and Bob. Good morning. Annie, head of the building committee, Mr. Hobbs.
Either Mike Tucker?
That's fine. Yeah, let me just make you co-host if you get something to share.
Okay, good morning. Good morning.
morning.
Thank you for
Morning.
inviting us. It's nice to see you all. Good morning, David.
Morning.
Mr. Ritchie.
So we're delighted to be here to share an update about the project. We are very grateful to have you as our largest investor in the project, and we want to give you an update on how the project's going and what's coming up in the future. So on the screen, you'll see a timeline of the project so far. No surprises here. You've all been very involved up to this point in where the project has been and how it's going. Things are going extremely well on site. Going back to December, this is the vision that we presented to planning and zoning as the condition of our approval. This is what was approved by planning and zoning on December 14th. Now, the site as it's going, this is a drone shot that was taken about 1 month ago. A lot has happened since then, as you'll see in this time lapse. The time lapse started about third week in January. So in the space of a minute, we're going to see about 3 months of progress. I'm sure everybody's driving past as they go to and from and see all the amazing progress. You'll see that the corner, the northwest corner has been enclosed just this week since Friday, which is pretty terrific. The roof is on there. We're working on the roof yesterday. The auditorium has been enclosed. The basement has been waterproofed and is about to be finished underneath. The fireproof stairwells have been completed. The concrete has been poured on all the decks. All the steel is in. That was the April 1st when we had the last beam be installed. You can see the flags flying up there. That's it. That's where that was yesterday. So things are moving really well. We're ahead of schedule. The enclosure you can see there in the bottom right of that image, you can see how the building's starting to be enclosed on the bottom level. And we're going to start to have some walls inside in the next couple of weeks.
So where's the camera positioned? I'm just trying to get
On
my,
top of the current building.
on top of the current building.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. Mhm.
As with everything, we try to save money where we can. Having a pole installed was about $15,000 more than mounting it on top of our existing building. It means we don't see around the corner very well, but it didn't, we're very, very cautious with our money. So topping off happened, as you saw in that video. All the steel has been erected. Concrete has been poured on all the upper floors. Foundations are complete, and the exterior wall construction is underway. Basement's almost finished. Coming up next, we'll have the exterior wall installation will be complete, and the building will be weather tight by June. That's the next really big milestone for us after the topping out. Permanent power will be installed. The elevator will be installed all this summer. Fundraising is going really well. We are currently, since December, when we last were at P&Z and got the approval for the final solution to the question about the legacy building, we've been raising $1 million a month once again. So things are going really well. People are very excited to have had that conclusion to that discussion and to be seeing the building going up. We've got some really exciting fundraising opportunities happening at all sorts of levels. We're obviously still talking to major donors, but we are also have both the chair project, wherein people in the community can put their family name or dedication on one of the chairs in the auditorium. And we have a really fun project that lots of young families are getting involved with to raise money for the children's room. So coming up over the next 6 months or so will be the integration of the legacy building into the project. And you can see here a simple diagram that sort of shows in the original plan proposed a year ago, we had 1A and 1B, right? So the building of the new library, demolition of the existing library, and the construction of the green. And then it turned out that the community felt it was important, and the P&Z voted on an option to keep the legacy building. And so we've integrated that into our plan. That changes the timeline a bit. We need to get started. Really, we needed to get started about a month or so ago to make sure that we're ready to integrate this project properly into the building without delays. I think it's important to note here that delays next February will be really costly to the overall project. And that's why we're mentioning this now. We've spent some time putting together a very comprehensive timeline to understand why it is important today that we have certainty about all the path forward for the legacy building. I can make this available to you later if you like, because I think this is very complicated and not very easy to understand the first time you're looking at it when there's about 30 lines in this timeline. And this itself is a condensed timeline. But as you can see, geotechnical, civil, and other engineering, as well as surveys, we need to be doing that this week to make sure that the relevant information is available to the architects who need to work extensively on new planning with the landscape architects to make sure that everything is ready for our legal team to put together a new application to planning and zoning for all the changes that the insertion of legacy building will mean to this plan. So as you can see, really, we've moved our dates, we've condensed this as much as possible, and May 2nd was yesterday to start the geotech and the site work, the civil
I
engineering.
actually can't see that. Are there other costs
Oh, yes.
associated
So
in
if-
that timeline, which again, I have a
So, yeah,
I have my
so if you,
father's eyes, not my mother's eyes, unfortunately.
yeah, so let me see if I can,
Okay. Okay.
how's that? Better? So if you look from start the survey work and the geotech work through to the point at which we would submit documents to the town planning and zoning. That's about $500,000 worth of work all in for all of those items together. That's that first tranche. That's all the work that needs to start now in order to submit an application to planning and zoning this summer. And that includes all of these things. So the preparation of existing conditions, structural and seismic engineering work, survey work, civil engineering work, and then extensive preparation of documents using those surveys and existing conditions, including revisions and amendments to the site plan, which of course, you know, we need to take lots of amendments back. The landscape architects and the engineers have extensive work to do to make sure that the drainage works with this change to the plan and all the other site work. Then we get into July, the site plan documents and amendments get submitted to P&Z. And then once all that documentation is finished, we'll be able to start working with Turner to prepare all the estimates for the next phases.
So the $500,000 that you mentioned is legal fees,
Engineers,
engineering,
a lot of work by the landscape architect that needs to be
Landscape
done.
architect,
The architects themselves. I can probably turn over to Ian to talk a little bit about all the things that need to happen in the next 5-6 months.
Yeah, there's the key, one of the reasons that we've done pretty well so far in the schedule and the budgeting is everything was planned out ahead of time. And there's a lot of work that goes.
you guys are ahead of schedule. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes. And so this is the time where we need to really understand what we're doing. And it looks like it's a simple, you cut a building and you just move it, but there's grading, there's utilities, there's structural issues that are not tied into, this is going to be an old building that we're going to leave standing that's not even partially there. So it's all of that needs to be worked out right now. And it's if we don't do it, then we'd be winging it on the fly down the road. And that's going to add to delays and added costs. And with at least what I'm seeing in the construction industry, the sooner you can put work in place, the better these days, just with the costs escalating and by waiting, it costs. There was a substantial cost to waiting through the P&Z process initially. So that was, we've already learned this lesson. So the goal is to go right from one project to the next.
And I think the other important thing is if we don't do as Ian says, then when we get to next February, all of the work planned, as Ian said, that we planned a year ago, we've still got substantial work to be done on the site. All of those people are locked in and budgeted in the GMP. If we don't do all of this and there's a delay, not only do the costs of the legacy project increase, as Ian just said, but all the rest of the project will have to be rebid at a later date as well. And clearly that's going to lead to a lot, the potential for a lot of increased costs in that unknown environment a year or more away.
I mean, inflation is rising hourly, daily. So I get that.
So this is the second page of everything that needs to happen, starting. So once we get to P&Z, once we've submitted our application for the amendments, et cetera, you'll see then the building permit process, zoning review. By then we will have done enough of the architecture and site plan and landscape architecture for Turner to then be able to give us a GMP on this part of the project. Obviously really important for the budgeting from there. Finalizing all contracts by November, as Ian said, these things take a long time to do. Between now and November, we've got a lot of work to do so that we can get all those subcontracts ready so that they're ready to roll.
So when will the new library, and I know you guys are ahead of schedule, be completed?
So substantially complete, we hope by the 1st of January.
1st of January?
Yeah, we hope to move out of the existing library in the month of January and open our doors to the public on the 1st of February.
That's really ahead of schedule.
A little bit.
Okay.
And so, Lisa, would you be kind enough, so if this schedule is followed, sorry, if this schedule is followed and the move out of the existing library happens early Jan, and then it says 3 weeks, I'm not sure what it says on the top, but that's a transition of 3 weeks moving from, okay. And
It's the
then,
length of that. It's not me.
okay. Go ahead.
Someone have their mic on?
And the 1,200 square feet legacy building will be preserved. In order for that to happen, obviously, regardless of all else, there's significant work that has to happen, engineering work that has to happen to make sure that that is a stable, structurally strong building that can withstand all of that. And then clearly the shift, and we talk about expenses, the shift to surgical demolition is a big increase in cost on the cost of demolition.
How much of an increase?
I don't think we have the exact numbers because we need the engineering to know how much we have to shore and to support to
Right.
tear down the building in this manner versus for, cleaning up the whole site. So it's, nobody knows the exact conditions of what's behind all the walls right now. We need to, that's what this phase would be, is figuring all of that information out.
So surgical demolition is more expensive than
Yes.
So
that,
men with
general
chisels,
demo.
not
Yeah.
a wrecking ball,
Right.
right? A lot
And
more labor.
there's parts of the building that just aren't there that we have to move. So we have to reconstruct those to move it or to leave it in place or whatever you do. It's not as simple as we're just taking a clean building and dealing with it.
Is there any advantage to check now what the situation might be in terms of?
That was
having
the
asbestos?
previous page. That's
Oh,
exactly what the previous page is all about.
We've done an initial survey on asbestos and there's clearly asbestos in there. So that's a big portion of step one.
So does that help you with your estimate then as to what might be needed in terms of
So-
cost?
So we know pretty well about the abatement costs. Those are in the current GMP, the majority of those. It's the surgical demolition that we were saying where there's a big increase.
Okay,
Hazardous materials engineers spent 3 days, a whole week on site about 18 months ago.
so
So
that's
that
part of
we-
your original
Of
budget.
course.
Got it.
So we
Okay.
knew, so that's the lead time for these things, right? So
Mhm.
we're now looking at changing our demolition plan in less than a year, which is why we need to get going right now.
Mhm.
And that's a significant change and a much more labor intensive type of demolition that's going to happen. So this plan that we're showing here allows us to more or less stick to the current budget. That's really important because, as I mentioned, we've got subcontractors already locked in and lined up next year that come after the demo, for abatement, hazardous materials engineers, for demolition, for hardscaping, site work, landscaping, et cetera, they're all locked in. So we want to stick to this budget as best we can.
So what is the budget?
The budget
number?
for this project, based on everything we know today, it's somewhere between 2.6, 2.8, we think. Depends on the level of finish. What we're looking to do right now is to get to prepare our funding so that we can make sure that we preserve the legacy building on site, and so that we can keep moving forward once that's done.
So 2.6 to 2.8 is surgical demolition, moving the building safely, putting it there, foundation, approvals, et
And,
cetera.
and all of these items that you see in this list all go into that. Every one of these has a cost attached to it. And as you'll remember, your budget for these things gets more and more accurate, the more and more detail in the plan. So at this stage, we've got a sketch, we know certain things. Every step of the way gets us new estimates at certain points that are much more reliable. And you remember 5 years ago, we were talking about a building, we thought it costed this because we had an estimate based on the sketch. Then you get schematic design, you get estimates, they're much more accurate. By the time you get to design development and construction documents, you have really good information for your estimates, and your estimates are solid. So we're at the early stages of this, but we've got the people who've been working on this building for a couple of years with Turner Construction doing really good estimates based on everything we know about the site and about the building. So we feel pretty confident. It can easily be divided into sort of a A and B, wherein we do all of this work and get it on its new perch and secure and safe and preserved. And then we can raise more money and then finish it off and make sure it's finished to the quality that this community would expect.
How much have you raised thus far for this particular project? So out of the 2.6, say.
So as you'll remember, Kathleen, this was a project that we hadn't planned. We didn't know exactly what it was going to look like until December.
Mhm.
As of December, we still had $13 million to raise for the main project. Of course, you'll appreciate, as our main investors, we've been entirely focused on raising $1 million a month for that project. In the 4 months since we became aware of this project, we haven't actively fundraised for it. However, I have received a check for $100.
Sorry,
I've received a check for $100.
$100. Any pledges?
No.
None, okay, no pledges. I don't recall the actual date when you met with us. Was it either before or after the December meeting? And we were talking about sort of the fundraising efforts for this particular project. And it was, I think I understood.
We haven't talked about fundraising for this project. We talked about the importance of finishing the main project, and that we will be very excited to raise money for this once we've secured the main project.
So I thought perhaps the question back then was, what if you don't raise the funds? What's the next step? And I was understanding back then, and I know things have changed, but that you felt confident that you would be able to raise the funds. Is that no longer the case in terms of your level of confidence in terms of raising that money, or from donors? As of the 2.6, what are you expecting?
I don't
from-
recall having this conversation. I'm sorry.
Okay, and I was just saying in our last update, which somebody checked me on that date, but okay, so there was never any expectation that there was going to be an opportunity to raise funds for this
For
particular
sure, there
project?
will be. I mean, what we had hoped was that those who were very interested in this would come forward, and so far one person has.
Okay,
I think what I said when we talked about it I haven't been in front of this body to talk about this project since December, but what we talked about at the time was that every expectation that, given all that had happened, we would expect that people would have shown up to support funding it. So far that hasn't happened, but I'm sure it will.
what's your timing for that in terms of fundraising? How much of this 2.6 are you thinking about requesting? How do you come up with the money? That's what I guess I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand in terms of your schedule.
So, I mean, we're here presenting what's lying ahead, right? So if we don't find a source of this money, there will be delays next year. those delays are going to be costly to the community at large because it's going to make the entire project cost more.
Mhm.
We got invited to present an update, and so here we are.
Okay. Is there a specific request, though? I guess is what I'm asking. From you, is there a specific
We,
request?
we need from somewhere $1.5 million to make sure this stays on track.
Okay, so of the 2.6, you're looking for $1.5 million.
And how would that, you mentioned the 500,000, which is P and Z and engineering and stuff. What's the other million?
So if you, when we look at this, the first $500,000 gets us to about July. So then I don't have all the details on.
I think generally that would get us to that would get all of our prep work done and the planning done. And then we'd look to be able to start, be ready once the building is finished and we've abated the hazardous materials, then we'd start actually building a foundation, engineering to doing the work that's necessary to shore up the building and prep it for the move.
So, and I think maybe what's sitting in your question as well is all those extra costs that now accrue to the change to demolition. That's in the 2.5 million, right?
Right.
That demolition cost, we had a baked in cost, that's now going up. We already have a site plan. We need a new site plan now. That costs money. We have
There's
engineering
no-
and drainage work.
Yeah, there's lots of drainage work that would change because you've now got a different surface that you're maintaining. You have new utilities coming in that we weren't planning on bringing into this part of the area. So there's a lot of work that has to be redone to make this work.
So it's not the actual construction and move. It's all these costs. It's all the redoing of all the work that happened already for the original plan.
So, bear with me. Assuming you raised the entire legacy building, and I'm not saying we should do that, but what would the additional cost be? Would it be no additional cost on your original budget?
Sure, yes,
Okay.
no additional cost.
What about if you left it in place?
Yes. we
What would
costed
the
that
additional
out as
cost
well.
of that be? Not 2.6 to 2.8, but what would?
2.9 to 3.2, we understand.
So you think it'd be more?
Well, so it depends. Obviously, we haven't done a plan for leaving it in place.
Right, and I'm not,
But there is
Yeah.
one, and there's a very well-developed one in terms of sketch. So we've had that costed out completely. And it's more than twice the size of building, so it's a much larger building than what we're talking about. The other thing is all of the work that we've just talked about, new site work, new drainage, change to demolition, all the planning, returning to planning and zoning with starting with seismic and structural engineering now, and all of the things that are in this list apply to both projects equally. But the other one is a much bigger project. The
so
one-
to be clear, you're saying that maintaining the legacy building in situ, the most overworked Latin phrase in New Canaan these days, would be more expensive than moving. it.
Correct. Yes, we have extensive documentation about that.
Okay.
And Ian can probably speak to the why.
Yeah, if you just look at our plan, we have rain gardens along Main Street. They'd be completely reworked. And I think instead of having rain gardens, you're now burying drainage, which is an extremely expensive endeavor. There would be full regrading. You've still got the equals would be, you still have to bring in utilities. You've still got you'd have to look at energy codes and see, if you look at the windows of the existing building, they're single pane glass. They have triple track storm windows on the outside. That's going to be it'd be nice not to have storm windows and have actual replica windows made and stuff, but that's what we anticipate doing. So it's we want to bring it back to look like a very nice building that's energy efficient and ready to go, insulated properly, re-sheet rock it, all that.
So just to clarify, so the 2.6, let's just take that as, is that all in? So it includes HVAC and toilets and so forth. And so it's complete then at that point?
We
Or-
think so.
Yes,
We think so.
Okay.
it's until you, it's a chicken and egg. Until you do full plans, you can't get
Understood.
perfect.
Understood.
cost.
That's your estimate at this point. Okay. And the timing for that too, and I'm sorry if it's on there, but it was move everybody in the books, et cetera. What's your plan then? How long is, assuming that you get your 2.6 million in terms of pledge, or maybe it's a phased approach? How long then to, in your plan for moving the legacy building? What's your schedule there?
So it's pretty swift. You see there about just below halfway down the page. That's sort of April. There's an allowance for 6 weeks there. I don't think it'll take nearly that long.
Well, it's all the prep that goes into
Right.
getting everything.
So it's
ready.
it's a year from now. Is that what you're saying?
A year from now that we would be moving it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
according, if we can start this week.
Mhm. Okay. And then is it have a usage yet? Have you identified what the usage
So
will be?
yeah, that's a great question. As you'd fully expect, we want to be very careful and deliberate in planning for this building. We have some ideas. Obviously, once we inhabit our new building, you know how it was when you moved into town hall and had all the new space. You planned for everything when you designed this new town hall. It's only after you're in that you can start to see what you might use extra space for. But I'm sure that there will be a really good use for it. Perhaps offices, for example, maybe our fundraising part of our operation could move in there. That would be a good legitimate use. But we want to be authentic, legitimate, and credible in anything that we decide to use it for, and not swift and hasty in that decision. Clearly, we need to understand that before we can fit out the inside. So
Mhm.
we will need to figure that out. But we have
Remind us what is the space then?
1,200 square feet.
1,200?
Which is about half the original 1913 building. Is that correct? Right. So you're going to cut it in half. How are you going to?
It's not there. The back half is not there.
Right, right.
It's got a floor and a roof that would need replacing. It doesn't have walls.
Right.
They were subsumed in the renovations in 36, 52, and 79. In fact, the north wall was removed in 36. Extensive parts of the west wall were cut through or removed in 52. And the entirety of the south wall of that back half was removed
Okay.
during 79.
Do you have to do a new foundation for the building once you move it? So it's a full basement or?
I think it'd be a crawl space of some sort, the
Okay.
mechanicals and could go, and maybe we'd have to look again at how the grading works, that maybe there's some storage that might be able to go under there, but it wouldn't be a full inhabitable basement.
Okay. But that structure would have to support the building, all four walls of the building going. Okay.
Yes.
And we've got appropriate insurance coverage with respect to the move in case you move stuff and it falls down.
We will do.
There's a one company that's the preeminent company that does this all the time, and they would be the lead candidate.
Moving buildings coverage. Is that?
Well, the actual moving, and they would be important to guidance through the entire process, including engineering.
And that's part of the
insurance.
expense too, presumably.
It's less than a third of all of this.
How many feet are you proposing this building moves? What, just remind us,
Oh, yes, it's less than 80 feet.
80 feet? Okay.
That's it.
For some reason in my head, I thought it was bigger than that, but 80 feet. Okay.
You're just moving west, right?
To rest.
Due west. So I'm tremendously supportive of this project from day one and continue to be. What's your ask going forward?
We didn't have a plan as we've discussed it at length over the last couple of years to include this. We are now embracing the inclusion of this. But as we've said all along, it comes with a cost and we need help to figure that out. In order to get this building secured on its new foundation, we think that's about $1.5 million.
How do you raise the rest?
Well, one, we'll be finished with raising money for the existing project by then. So we can turn our full attention. We're really good at raising money. We've raised 33 million, well, 23 million from the community and the 10 million, thank you, from the town. We're really good at doing this. So once we finish raising the money for the main project, I feel very confident we can raise the $1 million for finishing out this building.
And we don't need all of that money a day one.
We do
It's-
not.
could-
That-
we'd need
that could
probably
be-
500,000
That can be
sooner.
finished after we finish, next August 18th.
So your timing for completing your fundraising for the
Main
main part
project.
of the campus, if you will, and then in addition is, when do you expect that to be complete?
Oh, as soon as possible. But we're currently at a run rate of about $1 million a month.
Mhm.
So hopefully by the end of this year, this calendar year, we'll be fully finished.
The end of this calendar year.
That's the goal.
But you do have bridge financing from the town.
We have the availability to have that.
Right.
It's a lot harder to raise money to service debt than to build a building. It's not a great naming opportunity.
But that fundraising will continue, as you've said,
One hopes,
this year, next year, and forever and forever, presumably.
unless we
Right.
die from exhaustion.
Unless you what? I'm sorry. I couldn't hear.
I said unless we die from exhaustion.
Oh dear. We don't want that to happen. Okay.
The goal is to finish, Nick. We don't want to be doing this forever. There's so much more work that needs to be done.
I got it. Yeah.
So fundraising takes a lot of time and energy away from a lot of other things. So we would rather raise money as fast as possible and get it all in. Get the remaining 7 million in the main project, turn our attention to what hopefully will be an easy raise once we know we've secured, once we have certainty on this moving forward, which I think we do, but we need certainty around the funding. Once we have certainty on this, finish the main raise, I think raising that last $1 million won't be challenging for us.
And what if you are unable to raise that additional money?
But that can stretch out, right? Because if the legacy building is sitting on its new foundation, it's secure, then that last $1 million, well, we don't start finishing out the inside until the money's raised.
Oh, so you think you can do that project in terms of the move with just the $1.5 million?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
$1.5 million secures it on its new site, makes it watertight, safe from the elements, safe, ready to be finished off. So 1.5 gets us preservation of that building on its new site. And then hopefully we can raise that last $1 million with ease. But if it did take longer, the building is safe. So it's okay. It would just take a little longer, but it's not holding anything else up at that stage.
So that the additional, say, $1.1 million is your HVAC, your electricity? Is that what everything to make it
It would be. yeah,
functional? Is that the idea with the next?
Right, I think then
phase
you're
would
talking
be?
about nicer windows, checking the roof to make sure that it's authentic as opposed to, you can make a waterproof roof. With some of the roofs in fine condition, it's hard to tell what the backside of the library roof, and once it's been demolished, for what condition that'd be in. But if it's facing the garage, we could get that tight with less expensive measures than slate or something like that.
How far is it from the property line with the Gulf Station? And do you have to get a special permit? I forget what it is here. Is it 25 feet or something? Is that going to be closer to the line than?
So from a planning and zoning perspective, when we brought this to them, and you may recall that this whole project started off as we were going to take it apart. We were going to have some stones. We were going to put together something inside that memorialized this building.
Mhm.
And that was, the way that we went forward. And eventually, after the numbers of meetings that we had with both, people from this commission and people from P&Z, they wanted to see more than that.
Mhm.
And so, I'm just giving just a little bit of the history because I think it's important to understand that when we did go back there again with a plan that actually essentially saved the building, and I know there's disagreements with what that means, but to P&Z and to us and everyone else, I mean, we took a step from something that was very small to really a huge number for us as far as moving this building, keeping it in place, making it look more like a college campus with different types of buildings in it, and putting it in a place that frankly helps us on one sense because it shields the gas station that's behind us. So it actually functions in two different ways, from a screening perspective and also from creating the green, which is important also, obviously, because we have donors that have given to the green, not to anything else. So it was a big move for the library and the library board. And it was really well, as far as P&Z was going, I think initially there were 3 commission members that were very, against anything, perhaps, that other than leaving it where it was. And in the end, one of those commission members who probably would have liked to seen it in the same place came around and said, listen, you did what we asked you to do. We asked you to come up with something that was more meaningful to P&Z, to our town, to saving this building the way that you're proposing to save it. And, he came around and voted for it too. And I think that's just an important, because moving forward, I mean, all these commissions have looked at it, right? But whether it was town council, whether it was board of finance, whether it was board of selectmen, and we've been through a long process here. And it's been talked about and litigated amongst all of us in one way, shape, or form. And we finally came to an end, and we've had an arbitrator make that decision, meaning P&Z to a certain extent, because they're really the ultimate people who are going to make a decision as to how you develop in town. And, that's where we ended up. And when we went to the board and we brought this particular application, and we had the building where we had it, we did make the presentation. So listen, if we do put it here, we will probably have to do another text change to the text change that we already have for that zone, the library zone, based on the fact that we're probably going to put it as close to the property line as possible. So even though the Gulf Station is, I think it's on the property line, maybe it's 2 or 3 feet from our property line, we're going to nestle it up right against that. It won't be something that's irregular to the zone, because you already have a lot of buildings in all these zones that are right up next to each other, including just the retail A zone in town, where every building, that's Elm Street, is right next to each other. So it's not going to be that much of a difference. So yes, we'll have to go back and request that they allow the zone to have, we'll have to work on the language. Lawyers will work on the language as far as exactly how that would work within the library zone. But it would be, you can come up to 5 feet, so long as you're hidden from other neighboring properties and you're not a nuisance, and the safety and all that works. So yeah, we'll have to do that. Going back with any project to change anything on this site, we have to go back to P&Z for the most part. And I think it was, P&Z did a really good job in the sense, and they always do a good job. I mean, I'm in front of that board a lot, but they let everybody talk. They take in all the information. I mean, I don't think there was anyone on either side, whether you were on the left, the right, or the middle of this particular project, that didn't get a chance to say something or didn't get a chance to give their point. Sometimes I was surprised that everyone was in one shape or another, but they did. So it's all been done. I mean, to a certain extent, from a perspective, and us moving forward, I'm a board member of this, and I'm on the building committee as well. And when I came onto this, I didn't hear anything about a building ever staying. Just wasn't, I didn't know that, because I was newer to the board at the time. So I think that both the library and the trustees and the public and the people that support it really made a huge move, in my opinion, to put this building and to begin the process of raising money for it. But we can't do it right now. It's just not possible, because we weren't prepared to do it right now. That's never what the plan was. And it took a long way to get, honestly, our board and a lot of people on our board to even go with the legacy project. There were some people that weren't that fond of it, but they came around to realizing that in this community, in this town, we all have to make some sort of sacrifices and do the best for everyone. I think that's what we're asking this board to do as well, is to, you know, help us get to this next point. It's been approved. We've already been through all the various litigation around it as far as from the public, and obviously there's still litigation going on, but from the public perspective, and we really need to move forward now, or it's going to create a big delay. And, you know, I think that there's support from what we can tell from other boards, whether it's the town council and the Board of Finance. Obviously, they're going to have to go through the same reconciliation that this board does. And we're asking for you to make, you know, a recommendation. And if you feel like you can't make the recommendation at some point, I mean, I would just ask as a townsperson as well, just then let it go to the next group. You know, if you don't feel like this is something that you can get behind for one reason or another, I think it's imperative that we let town council, we let Board of Finance make the decision ultimately for putting this $1.5 million, which is what we're asking for today, into place so that we can continue to go on.
David, can the Gulf Station object to the property line?
They will have an opportunity to object to it once we file another special permit, because obviously.
Can you ask them now?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't objected to date, but yes, I'm sure that we can request whether or not they'll be supportive or not, but obviously that can change at any point too from support. I mean, unless we get some sort of letter from them, which we can certainly request. I just suspect that if in fact they were against the project, they would have already said something about it, but I understand your point. Yes. I mean, it's back wall to back wall, so it doesn't affect them per se, but you know, neighbors, it's half my business.
I'd be somewhat shocked if P and Z wasn't supportive of
There was a
your
couple,
efforts, since it's P and Z who said, move, you know, do something else.
and there was
Solution.
I think it was Commissioner Chris who indicated actually during the hearing that in fact, you know, you guys are probably going to have to come back to us for these types of things. And as far as his the approval that went, you know, he made some positive comments that he would be looking favorably at us coming back for that type of a request, which was important. I should have actually mentioned that at the time, but he did on behalf of his approval.
But the immediate ask is $500,000, because literally,
Well, I think we need the surety that there's a backside to that
Mhm.
is there when the time comes. Otherwise, we can do all the planning, but if we don't have the financing guaranteed, then it would leave us up to a lot of issues, potential issues.
So I think it's 1.5, but are you saying, could it be tranched? Well, sure.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned $500,000.
Immediately, $1.5 million
Kinda like today,
altogether
yeah,
gets us a
right.
certainty of securing the building. $1.5 million is what it's going to take to secure the building. The first $500,000 is required immediately. I think importantly, one of the things that you've heard about today is the urgency of doing this and what the consequences of not working swiftly are. And that is that it will just take longer, and the longer it takes, the more money. And as Rich Townsend on the town council said about a year or so ago, this is being paid for by the citizenry of New Canaan, whether it's from their own pockets or through the structure of the town government's involvement, one way and another. It's all coming from the residents of New Canaan. And so we're really interested in not costing more than it has to.
Mhm.
And the way to keep that cost from escalating on both this legacy project and the main project is to keep everything moving according to schedule.
Yeah, it's important to note that we've got the attention of Turner, we've got the attention of Centerbrook right now. If we didn't okay them to move ahead in an efficient way, there would be a potential real expense for them to demobilize and then to move ahead at a later date. There's efficiency right now.
So David, I think as you pointed out, you know, these types of projects come through all the town bodies, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and then town council ultimately. And part of that process in this case would be say 15% increase over what's already been given by the town. And just one question there, has the full 10 million been provided and spent?
No.
Okay. How much? has been?
5.7, and the application will go in very shortly for the balance.
For the balance of the 10 million? And how about the letter of credit? Has there been any drawdown on
No,
that at
at
all?
this stage, we are very hopeful. Well, if we need any money for that, it won't be until October at the earliest. And so the Board of Finance have asked us to come chat with them in the next couple of months to make sure that we've organized all of the needful in the event we did want to take advantage of that borrowing. It is our dearest hope, as it has always been, to not take advantage of that. But at the moment, the earliest date would be October.
So is any project that comes forward, again, if you consider, your source of funds, you're asking the taxpayers for an incremental 1.5 million. Is there bridge loan financing? Is there letter of credit? Is there donor, et cetera? And all of the different options therein. And part of the process, just as an example, we're talking about the powerhouse, and it's gone through all the committees, and it takes time and with a lot more detail before any recommendation is through. So we haven't seen any of that. We're just looking at it for the first time. And so having that information with more detail, just to understand, I know you haven't had any, maybe you have had bids in terms of what you're expecting. How does that 500,000 come up in terms of did you get quotes in terms of what they've said?
Yes, all the design.
You've got that.
and-
So if you'd be kind enough, if that's part of what your request is, to give us the level of detail that is common for any specific request for additional taxpayer money, original taxpayer money, and which you've already provided, and then additional in this particular case. That's one thing I'd be looking for, all of the different financial options that you have, and the process, a little bit more that we can have an opportunity to
So-
review.
Can you be really clear? So I want to make sure we're really understanding what you're asking for here.
A proposal. Just as anybody would in terms of requesting for funds from the community. So right now, we're just looking at this for the first time. So I would like to see, as anybody would, I would think, what the specific request is, proposals, timeline, et cetera, costs behind. Just as any project, the Vine Cottage, we have bids, we understand what the actual costs are going to be. And right now, I haven't seen those.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got it. It was what you put on the screen. We need that in detail, plus the dollar amounts associated with the.
When would you like it?
When you're ready.
I mean, I've got it in my bag, but it's paper, so we'll put it together.
Yeah, just any presentation to anybody, just the details.
So part of the package that the town has bestowed on the library, and I think rightly included the parking. Can you just remind me, because it's been a while, what the parking situation is? We've got usage, we've permitted usage across the street because the underground parking didn't really work out.
We've got a
Right.
a long-term lease. We've got a prorated amount this year because we started in November.
And that includes renovations by you guys, right?
In the event that they are required by an external party after we've been in with a full certificate of occupancy for a year. But what we currently are paying for, we're paying $10,000 a year for 76 spots. At the moment, we're paying $10,000 a year for 20 spots plus the space that the construction trailers are on. Once the construction trailers move, we'll continue paying $10,000 a year for 76 spots, which was about market rates for those spots.
I forget, was there a term of that contract, or was it in perpetuity?
I believe it was in perpetuity. I think you reserved all your rights, of course, as you would do as the town. But the intention was in perpetuity.
Lucky that was across the street. In retrospect.
Handy.
I have no further questions.
Nor do I.
I'm inclined to think that you should go back to P and Z now. So in the next 2 weeks, we'll discuss I mean, as Bill Murray said, that I've only been thinking about this for a week, but I've been thinking about this a lot as to what the next step should be.
Yeah, if I could just comment on that. I mean, fortunately with P and Z, all the work that we're talking about now, as far as engineering, architecture, drainage.
I don't mean for the full-blown request for a new site plan. I'm just saying, this is a condition you agreed to,
Yeah,
and you now can't perform. P and Z probably has to understand that, and
well, we don't, that's not
not saying
necessarily
we can't.
true. I mean, we can still perform that. We need the money to start moving forward. No, but I mean, it's not, yes, we have a condition on P and
this
Z.
is sort of
We
for-
can always
this
go
is
back to.
sort of foreseeable in December is my point, that I think,
Yeah, but I mean, you can't expect us to be raising $1.5 million on a project that we weren't even prepared to do, to which we moved 80 yards as far as the football field goes to get to that particular point. And I would also say that from a P and Z perspective, I mean, if we can't do this project for one reason or another, we can't get there, we would go back to P and Z and try to modify our special permit, just like Grace Farms has done in the past, just like St. Luke's has done in the past, when there are things that conditions have been put on them, that in fact, they're unable to, or unwilling at some point in the future to actually comply with. I also think that this project, I mean, I know, this project was approved without the legacy building initially. We were asked to come back and give them something more meaningful, but it was approved without the legacy building being moved. It was approved with the understanding it was probably going to be demolished by P and Z. And they said, but we want you to come back and give us something more meaningful about this particular building. And that's what we did. We came back. We could have come back with anything. Initially, we had actually put up some sort of, we were looking at like a folly, like just the front of it to be put somewhere on the property or maybe inside the building or whatever it happened to be. We could have come back with, although I don't think they would have liked it, but we could have come back with something like, could have taken all the stones and made a walkway, or we could have put some sort of naming on some part of the original building, but it was not. The legacy building that we proposed today, they had no idea that we were going to do something like that, TNC. So the project was approved
With conditions though, no?
with the conditions that we come back and show them something more. But for sure, the understanding was it was not, the demolition of the building was going to happen. I mean, with that first approval, that was absolute. All they said is we want to see something more with this building. They didn't say, they knew it was going to be left in place because they didn't even approve it left in place. They couldn't. We presented a plan with it not on the plan. So that approval came with them understanding that this building was going to be demolished one way, shape, or form. With the condition that we,
With conditions, I thought,
with,
yeah.
yeah, with the condition that we come back and show them something more meaningful as to how we were going to preserve parts of the building, not the whole building. So we've actually
You've done that.
almost a lot of the building, very much so, much of the building. And I think it looks really good on this particular plan. I think it's a real asset to the town to have it there, to make the way that it looks. And I think it brings a lot back. I think a lot of the public comments, and obviously not everyone will always be happy, but a lot of the public comments, there were people that wanted to see that building remain. Where it remained was not necessarily the case, but they want to see it remain, and you have that now. It's going to remain. It's going to look like it's there. It's 80 feet away, but it's going to look like it's there, and it's going to be usable, and it's going to be still an asset, and it's still going to show, have the same fit and form that it has today, albeit
At what
upgraded.
cost, right?
Of
So
course, at the
that-
cost.
I mean, it
Regardless, we
comes
have
down
a
to
cost.
The economics at some point, and
Yeah.
that's what we have to consider, whether or not it's worth the economics and for the taxpayer. So that's what our consideration is. So that's the level of detail that we have.
I
to-
understand that. I mean, you should have a summary page that shows what the numbers are. That's completely acceptable.
Yeah.
Request in my opinion.
Thank you.
well, thanks for the update, and the library's legacy building proposal folks, the Preservation Alliance asked to present as well, so we'll have their presentation now. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks a lot to you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Morning.
See you in here, Neely. Are you in it today? Or is that- Oh, you're in Ncpa. Okay, you should be all set.
I've forgotten your name. So we have Neely Sticknoff and
Susan Polish.
Susan.
Almost ready. Okay, I'm Neely Sticknoff, Board President of the New Canaan Preservation Alliance. And as you just heard, this board member is Susan Polish. And thank you all for including us on the agenda this morning. Susan and I are pleased to have the opportunity to present NCPA's proposal regarding the future of the 1913 library. First, let me say that the NCPA is in support of the new library and the planned library green. The New Canaan Library has always been an important part of the DNA of our town, and we believe that the new library is an important and very positive step forward in ensuring that New Canaan remains the wonderful town that it is. Our concern is the future of the historic 1913 library, which sits in the Business District A and is protected under the Village District guidelines. To date, the library has still not identified a use for the building. As presented, they plan to cut the 1913 library in half and move it 80 feet to the rear of the library parcel, satisfying a condition of the new library building permit and at a cost of about $2.5 million. Since the library has not been able to raise the funds to move the building, the disposition of the project is highly uncertain. And of late, taxpayers of New Canaan could be left to fund it. We have a solution that we believe would address both problems. First, we propose that the 1913 library be preserved in place at the corner of Main Street and Cherry Street and be transformed and repurposed, becoming an integral part of the library green. The transformation of the 1913 library happens at the back, the part of the building directly facing the green. A glass curtain wall will be installed. The result will be a flexible, versatile space with a multitude of uses for the benefit of the library and the town residents it services. This space would have a variety of uses as a gallery space, a lecture, meeting space, or as an entertainment venue that will meet the needs of the library and its patrons, New Canaanites. The glass curtain wall will fold, opening the library to the outdoors, so it can be the site of open air events. The transformation of the 1913 library would provide a useful and integral enhancement as the library green evolves into a true library campus. The folding glass wall will allow a seamless flow from interior to exterior, a fusion between architecture and landscape, a major tenet of modernism. The 1913 library is an ideal candidate for green adaptive reuse. That's the sustainable, environmentally friendly use of older sites to meet modern needs. It's a great way to connect New Canaan's past with its future. By returning the library to its original configuration, we will create additional lawn and circulation space around the building and near Cherry Street specifically. And the access to water and gas mains are right there. And the accessible green behind the transformed 1913 at just slightly less than half an acre can easily accommodate hundreds of people. As a matter of fact, there could be over 500 of the 6-foot circles now famous during the pandemic with visible access to the open folding glass wall. We respectfully request that the NCPA be given the opportunity to raise the funds needed to pay for the preserved 1913 library transformation and repurposing. The position of the NCPA is very simple. We will raise the money necessary to preserve and repurpose the 1913 library where it sits on the corner of Main Street and Cherry Street. Our plan would cost half of what it would cost to cut the building in half and move it. And our plan would be carried out without any dollars appropriated by the town of New Canaan. Over the course of the last 2 years plus, we have developed an extensive list of supporters and are ready to start a true capital campaign. Our supporters include nonprofits, foundations, and present and former residents. The commonality is the love of our town and its history. Preserving and repurposing the historic 1913 library at the corner of Main Street and Cherry Street is the easiest and least expensive way to transform it for the future. It will also bring huge benefits to the library and New Canaanites. Our plan maintains the building's historic significance, and maintains the historic character of our downtown. This will be actual preservation that New Canaanites can rally around. We very much hope you'll seriously consider our proposal. And we'll take any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So just maybe same questions that we asked of the library. What sort of level of confidence do you have that you can actually raise these funds, and over what period of time?
We're highly confident that we can raise the funds. We did, a little bit of work on that back in November, and to great success. So we're confident we can raise them. We also, have a time frame that I think we would raise them very quickly, and certainly by the end of this year.
So by December, if you
Yeah.
started right away, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's something that would happen very quickly.
So
if it's going to happen.
Right. There seems to be quite a difference from what we just heard of the library, suggesting that leaving the 1913 library in place would cost, by their estimates, more than the move, which they range 2.6 to 2.8. And I believe that their estimate was like 2.9 or higher if it stayed in place. And again, we didn't see the details, so I'm not completely certain of those numbers. Give me a sense of why there'd be a big gulf between the 2.9 and the 1.5.
Yeah, I was equally surprised to hear that it would cost more to keep the building in place. We have in the information that I sent you all yesterday, there was an exact budget there. And it, basically it's a preservation project. So a firm like Turner, they are wonderful, they're great. I've worked on projects with them, in my career, but they are not preservation contractors. And the process that you would want to see, or that we would want to see, is for it to be an actual preservation project. So for example, the salon room, it's in great shape and it should stay as it is. The idea that every single piece of gyp has to be replaced and every single piece of molding around the windows has to, that's not the goal of a preservation project. So there's a significant difference in pricing between what Turner would do. And even when they had Dharma, I think, had done a budget, who also does very large projects. And it was, this painstaking effort of taking every piece of stone out and putting it back together again. The building is in great shape. And we've had a lot of time to take a look at it, certainly from the exterior. As far as the rear wall, there is a 3-foot deep wall in the back of the original 1913 library.
3 foot deep
3-foot wall.
stone?
Well, what's happened is that our guess is it's been encased, because that's what's holding the roof up now. So we would like to, what the first thing that we would have to do is have a moment to do some testing and make sure that it's really sitting there. But Yankee life is such that they wouldn't have taken the wall down just because take that wall down and then puts a different structure up would be very silly, because they still needed the wall there. So there's a lot more there than everyone seems to, than the new library building committee would like to review. And that's why we're preserving a building is just a different thing.
It's restoration and preservation versus more of like a new construction type of approach. When we heard things like, they gotta gut the thing and they gotta rewire it and do all of this. Well, we don't think it needs all of that and we won't do it. And so it's the difference between restoration and new construction.
Part of what your proposal is obviously is working in partnership with the library,
Yes.
obviously. And has there been any communication between you and the library about this particular proposal or an opportunity?
No.
Okay.
That's the question I was going to raise. Procedurally, you guys are a third party that's outside of the process, right? This is library property. This is, their building. They want to move it. I don't think they really want to move it, but
No.
they have to move it. So how would you guys interact with the library? I mean, you're not having discussions with them presently, but were they to say, throw their hands up and say, we're going to just leave it where it is, would you envision a partnership or joint venture with the library to
Yeah, we
go
would,
forward with your funding? And
right, we would treat the library as the client.
Right.
The only difference is not only are we providing the service, we're providing the funds. Usually the client would provide funds.
We see this as a potential partnership with the library.
Would have to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Although that partnership would only be taking place during the time that we would be doing the design and construction. When the project is complete, this is going to be the gift of preservation to the library, and we will step back.
But your point is, again, back to in situ, that's the only, moving the library just doesn't work for you folks from a preservation standpoint.
No,
And why, walk me through that. Why is that? I mean, half a loaf better than no
No,
loaf.
it removes all the historic value of the building. This is that they're going to cut it in half and they're going to move it. Some of the value, the historic value is bringing it to its original size, not a portion of it, but its original size, but also it's its place in the community. And that's why we were constantly referring to it in situ, because that's an aspect of what makes it historic, is that it has sat at that corner for over 100 years. If they move, if the building is cut in half and moved to the back of the library parcel, we'll have to wait another 50 years for it to be considered historic, even though it may be the exact same building. It has to do with place as well.
It was designed for the site it sits on, and it's very much, the site is very important to the historical importance of the building, the site. And it was very carefully sited on that corner as a sort of run up Main Street as the cornerstone. One thing that I think hasn't been addressed by the library, and I don't know that P&Z really thought about this, but we feel that the plan that we have, the proposal, the plan that we show is a very thoughtful, beautiful, delicate building and a restored building. And by that, I mean, at least 70% of what you're going to see in our plan is glass. It's transparent. And so it takes away the volume of the building. The volume of the building practically disappears. It's basically the east elevation that faces Main Street, but that is punctuated with very large lights, very lot of glass on the front facade, on the main east elevation. And then you've got the Palladian window on the front, on the south, on the north, and then on the south, you have a sort of triptych Palladian window. Huge glass, lots of light coming into the space. And then you've got our new folding glass wall, entirely glass. So in essence, what that building does is it almost disappears on the green. I mean, you have, of course, the great facade of the front building, but it's not, it won't look like a large volume sitting in the middle of the green. It will be a very delicate structure on the green, reflecting all of the landscape and the new architecture. And so it complements the campus, it complements the new architecture, and it reflects the beauty of the landscape. Beyond that, it has a very viable function, a function that the library early on mentioned they wanted, a bandstand. A use they wanted, they were thought about. And we're responding to that quest. They wanted exterior space for performances. And this satisfies it so far better than a tent.
So for me, I guess I think it boils down to the economics. I mean, everybody has different reasons of why they love it where it sits or moved. And so you get the benefit of a larger lawn, et cetera. For me, I think as representative of the taxpayers, it's about the economics. And if I understand it, I'm not trying to oversimplify it here, but if I look at maintaining it where it is for how many square feet, I guess 2,400 square feet at the proposed no cost to the taxpayers versus, and that, leave it in place, et cetera, versus moving it 80 feet for half the size at a cost of 2.6, of which 1.5 would be from the taxpayers. I mean, that's kind of, and so two things in me, you have to come, I would think you'd want to, number one, have a partnership with the library. You can't do this without the library, right? So you've got to, in some way, meet with them and figure out if this is a workable solution. And two, we have to get some sort of recognition as to why is there this big gulf of an estimate of, if you leave it in place, it's 2.9 million versus the proposed 1.1, of which you're suggesting that there's going to be enough interest in fundraising able to cover that. So that would be sort of among the other things of coming back to us. That's what I'd like to see, the economics.
Yeah, that's a major fact we need to discern. It's a $2 million delta, essentially.
So in other words, if the town was in for half of the how much is your budget to restore and have the glass?
1.5.
1.5. So if that number is correct, and the town was to pay half of that, 750, and you raise the other 750, it's a better deal than paying 1.5 for a building that is not even operational yet.
That would be a great deal.
And without a use.
But you're not asking for 750, are they?
I'm just saying, I'm just saying in terms of the economics for the
But I like
town.
the deal.
I mean, why would we pay for 1.5 million for an empty building?
Yeah,
We
they're
figured
suggesting that
that's-
you don't have to pay anything.
We figure that's costing $2,000 a square foot.
Well, look, in fairness to the library, that wasn't part of their plan. This building was not part of their plan.
It is now.
It
Well,
is for
Half
P and Z.
half of the building is part of their plan. That's the problem.
But I mean, Dave Rucci said, that a lot of the donations that were made to the library were because of the green. And I think, whether you for or against it, I believe that to be true, what David said. And I think, there are significant donors who, condition their pledge on having this green without the 1913 library there. So I just want to make that point on behalf of the library, just to.
Part of if I understood it correctly, that part of what you're proposing is that the green is actually going to be still there. I mean, taking a part of the building, how much is actually, by moving it over 80 feet, right? And it's going to obviously be 1,200 square feet, taking of the green already versus what it was a year ago. And then this is just another 1,200 square, but it sits in the middle, understood, or closer to Main Street.
But it
So you've
still
got
leaves
that
a very,
space.
very open amount of space that's close to half an acre.
Mhm.
And as I said, that holds hundreds of people. We had contacted Waveney last year and said, you know, when you have a concert that people really like to go to, how many people wind up being at Waveney? And it was like 400. This space, this green at the size that with the 1913 library in its location on Cherry and Main would still be able to handle 400 people. Think of Waveney. I mean, that's a huge space that's going to wind up in right on in Main and Cherry, and we're not encumbering it in any way.
And in our view, the plan is a gift to the green. It gives the green a life that it wouldn't have without this. It would have maybe some lawn furniture and some stools and a portable tent. But this plan gives the green another life. And I would think that a lot of the donors would applaud.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not speaking for the library, but it is possible that the library would prefer to self-fund and move the building rather than to accept this plan. I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you for the presentation. We're coming up on 10 o'clock. And any further questions?
None for me.
None.
Thank you. Appreciate
very
it.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We all have public comment in the beginning. Keith, but just briefly.
I promise you to be very, very quick. I'd just like to say that I do think it's a fundamentally flawed concept to try to move any portion of the 1913 building anywhere. I think it's too old, it's masonry, and I don't think it'll work. And secondly, I don't have any confidence in hearing that it will cost more to leave it in place than it would to move it. I do believe those numbers deserve close scrutiny. So I hope that you will consider what I have written to you also in the electronic communication with my other reasoning behind. There's a lot of site work to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Okay. Returning to the agenda, wastewater treatment plant. This is a switch.
Good morning.
Bill Osman, good morning.
So we would like to install a manual transfer switch down at the wastewater treatment plant. This would be a switch that the new mobile generator that you all approved that we ordered would plug into. What it'll do is it'll serve as a backup to the current generator that's there, which at times has gone down for either for maintenance or what have you. And we always have to have a generator on that treatment plant. It's very expensive to rent. So with the availability now of this mobile generator, you all approved that we'd like to have the switch gear in place to operate that building. We'd like to have Huntington Power equipment do all that installation since they are the vendor supplying the generator. And what I'd like them to do is own all that liability and ownership of installing it so that when the new generator shows up, they're literally going to plug it into this new switch gear and run it for 8 hours because there's a lot of money at stake here, as you know. And the generators are almost $250,000. So we want to make sure it's all up and running and working properly. There's money in the major maintenance reserve fund to cover this. And we'd like your approval to install it.
So do we bid this?
We did not. We went right to the Huntington Power since they're the supplier of the generator that we ordered. Like I said, we'd like to have
Oh,
them.
you're talking about the portable generator.
The
We-
portable
we
generator.
bid the portable generator.
Yes, we bid the portable generator, yes.
But isn't this mainly electrical work compared to manufacturers?
It's switchgear for transfer switches that are all associated with having a generator. And there's a lot of electrical involved also. It's complicated because there's a generator there with transfer switch. So there's a lot of moving parts here when you add a second manual switch. That's why we're going manual. We're not going automatic. We want to fail safe on it to be manually operated. And we'd like them to own all that responsibility, make sure it's all hooked up right. So when we bring that new generator down, they plug it in, it's going to work right. To bring a third party into this with that electrical work
So,
might be in a lot of finger pointing if something were to go wrong.
so for a building that doesn't have a generator and we want to use the mobile generator there, what would a switch, what would the connection cost as opposed to this complicated switch when you have a generator?
Well, if you're asking if we went to a building that has no generator at all and add it,
I mean, part of the reason to buy the mobile generator was to be able to use it.
right, well, you have a lot of this switch
is
gear
it-
already installed, that like a police department, fire department has it. All the pumping stations already have it. So we've been building this project over years. Mead Park Lodge also has it. So
As what, this,
it has all, it has a switch gear already all in place in these buildings already. The wastewater does not have one, nor does the town hall yet.
So all the other buildings that have generators have switch gears already?
Yeah, even if they don't have a generator, they have switch gear. Lapham Community Center does not. That's something we're working on in the next project. So we've been trying to grow this program over years because do a building at a time, a couple buildings at a time. And we just feel at this point here, because we wanted to, when we looked at the generator, size of the generator, we want to know what the worst case would be. And what's the greatest liability in our buildings. We felt it was a wastewater plant. So that if that building power failed and the generator didn't work, our biggest liability is the 5 Mile River, obviously, and the DEP and fines that would be associated with that. So that's why we feel it's good time and now, because we size that generator to run that wastewater plant.
When are we taking delivery on the mobile generator?
They're trying to get a build date now. They're talking about a build date around July. They're not committing to anything because of the supply chain stuff, so I'm hopeful to see it by fall time.
So
And I'd like to have this in place before then, so it's ready.
why
for it.
shouldn't we go out and bid this?
For this price, I would think, but how much, remind us, how much was the generator? That mobile generator?
229,000, I think it was.
29,000?
229,000.
229,000. Okay. And is the idea that it is going to be mobile? We're going to
Yeah,
use
no,
it in
it's
different
gonna be-
places?
yeah.
So, okay.
So what the plan would be to park this, either the mobile generator at the wastewater plant as a backup, so it's there for the biggest liability. And then if we didn't need it there, we needed another building, we just tow it. It's on its own trailer. It's all self-contained.
This is coming out of the major maintenance reserve for the sewer system, and the money's there, but the point is, I don't know, and I buy the idea that just because Huntington Power Committee is supplying the generator, they build the generator, or they.
They're a vendor. They're like the dealership of that particular generator, and then they'll be setting up, bringing it down, doing the training on it. It's elaborate. It's
So they're,
high
they're
tech.
providing the generator and now they're.
Well, we'd like them to
providing
provide this switch and install the switch gear so that it's all one person, one company responsible for all this on this particular setup, because it is very complicated and I want to make sure it's right.
And is there going to be a request for any of this similar at Lapham? You said same
In
thing,
the future, there will be, and
about the same amount, 60,000?
I don't know, because every building is different. Town hall probably up around there because we have 3 switches in here. I think I had a rough number of about 70 as an estimate for the town hall eventually. Lapham Center probably less because it's a little smaller building. It all goes by how much, the amperage that are going in the building, whether it's a 3-phase or a single-phase building, and extreme high voltage.
So I'm sorry, we don't have a switch gear for the town hall?
We do not have manual switch gear yet for town hall. We have the automatic transfer switch and everything set up for generator we
Do
have.
you contemplate we're going to Huntington Power for the next one we do as well?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't get that far yet, thinking this string through, because I did talk to our current maintenance Northeast generator, and I talked to both of them, trying to get a plan as to which is the best approach for this building, because it's a little complicated too. It has 3 switches, so we have to figure out how to intercept it. So there's some more engineering thought has to be put in it to see which is the best way to go, and then whether we bid it out or is it somebody's a little bit more familiar and specializes in this type of setup.
So the portable generator is diesel.
Is diesel.
It's got a big tank on it as well as,
It has a tank on it. It'll last 24 hours at full run. It's like 500 gallons, I think.
So the auto switches that we currently have here, and is there an auto switch at the wastewater treatment as well?
Yeah,
So in a power outage, you couldn't go and press a button and have it start up? No,
Boy,
it's dead.
I wish it was that easy. If that generator, the on-site generator failed, you just can't, we've done it before. It's a day and a half of work to hardwire it in to pull all the, you gotta realize I have 16 big cables. We'd have to pull out of all the switch gear, run all new cables, plug it in, get the direction on it right. So it's not so simple as just to go and hardwire something in, even on a temporary use. It's just too involved. Small buildings is easy. The big buildings is not.
Okay, so if we didn't have this switch, I'm sorry.
All of our
Tiger.
generators have switchgear on them. So they're sitting there and they got switchgear, right? So the switchgear is there, the power gets shut off at the street, it automatically turns on the town hall. So you don't even notice it here. There's barely a glimmer when the town hall turns on, and all of our other generators are the exact same way. But that switchgear won't work for one that we're bringing in from outside.
Right.
So we have to install a different one for the new generator, the temporary one. So if the town hall fails, the town hall generator fails, we would then bring the new generator in, park it, and then manually switch everything back over again. Because if not, we're going to electrocute some guy on a wire, on a pole somewhere down the street, or God forbid, some homeowner somewhere else who's messing with their own power, because electricity flows backwards and forwards. It doesn't care. So all of our systems are already set up to instantaneously change.
Mhm.
This is something completely separate, whereby we're looking at our system failing, not only the primary system coming from Eversource, but the secondary system of our generator that we have on site. Now we're bringing something in. Now we've got to basically turn the breaker off and then bring it back over again to the other generator. That's the problem that we have. And based upon the size of the buildings and the loads that are here, especially at the wastewater plant, that's why the larger systems have larger transfer switches. Your house, very, very small, very, very inexpensive.
Mhm.
Here, unfortunately, at town hall, we actually have 3 systems right now in place for the generator that's here. So there's 3 separate switches in this building itself. This building is actually built like a hospital, okay, whereby certain sections of it get shut down. You can actually have other sections come up, right? So this building, unlike all of our other buildings, is even more difficult to try to say when we bring in the temporary generator. God forbid we have to bring it in. At that point in time, what are we going to do? Our feeling was to go with Huntington because we really want one finger on the pie, right? In this thing, we want one person in there versus when we bring this, $125,000 generator, $250,000 generator in, we don't want someone else who put in the switchgear to then say it doesn't work, right? Now we've got 2 contractors fighting with each other on the fact that, no, you set it up one way and I needed it another way, right? What we want is we bring it in. He's got this new manual switch in at the wastewater plant. Okay, we shut down the power to the street. We turn the generator over on this manual switch and run the new generator. It better run, and then we're going to run it for an entire day or 2 on full load to make sure that the new generator will work with the new transfer switch. If we bring in additional contractors, sometimes it gets a little bit more difficult because if it doesn't work, who do we point the finger at? We got 2 guys pointing their fingers at each other: the guy who built the generator, or the guy who built the transfer switch. Right? I want one body.
Yeah, I get it. I just want to understand. So we got this mobile thing that it can only work with buildings that we have the manual switch.
Right.
Correct, but we've been setting up all of our buildings towards that end, especially on the smaller end. The larger buildings, we had no, necessarily no need to at present, right? But on the smaller ones, all of our pump stations are exactly, they're called pigtails. They're all pigtailed out. Everything is, and everywhere we work, we're trying to do that. But we're building the system sometimes at the forefront, say at the wastewater plant, right? Or on the backside, right? So the wastewater plant pumping stations, as we put them in, we give the pigtails. Now, this one here, now that we have this capability, we're having to build it from the backside.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's a big box with cables that you'd have to pull them in, you pull them in, you can't lock them in. And there's a thing called rotation on the higher voltage buildings where if you got it all wrong, the building would run backwards, and that's not a good thing. That's a bad day.
So who's going to come and remove this? It's parked at the transfer station, or I'm sorry, at the wastewater treatment plant, because they have an emergency generator you want to back up. So who's going to go and push the button?
You.
That's my point.
Make sure you're standing in water. when you
That's
do
my
it.
point. We have an emergency here.
Right.
Right.
So let's say, let's use an example. The biggest liability is the wastewater wastewater plant.
We have to
So
keep
that's why we like to keep it
We have
there.
to keep that going, right?
Right, we got to keep that going. We'll keep it there. We can even keep it temporary wired in if we had to.
And my
just so
question
that-
though is is it Bill Olsman that's gonna come and push the button, or is it a
Well,
fireman who's been trained to do it, or, I mean, because this sounds kind of dangerous the way you.
it's not that it's not that it's dangerous. There's a lot of training involved here. Public Works will be involved.
Would
We also
Eversource
have-
come in and?
We also have an electrician that would help us out, but the hard wiring part of it will all be done ahead of time. It's in place.
That's sort of my point. In terms, Huntington Power Equipment is over in Long Island.
No, they're up in Connecticut.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
Oh,
Seymour, yeah.
Where are
Seymour,
they?
Seymour, I think it is.
where are they?
I think up in Seymour up that way. They're not that far.
So in an emergency, they're not that far away.
Yeah,
If we needed them,
Yeah.
we also have electricians on call.
yeah, we have
Here.
which, yeah.
Well, that's my
that helped
point.
us in the past.
That's my point. If I'm kind of inclined to think we should have did this, because we're going to do more of them, a couple more in the future.
We can certainly bid the ones in the future, but we're feeling like, you know, we wanted to have one entity involved versus.
For
having
this one,
several.
yeah. Get this
But you're
thing-
going to have the same argument in the future.
Quite possibly, yes. We can give you a bidded number on the next ones and see exactly where Huntington
Anyway,
falls.
anybody have a problem approving this today? Or would you?
Is this a rush? I mean, can we get, in 2 weeks, can you get another
not a
bid
rush.
and just to get a
We don't
sense
have to Have it
of,
immediately. We don't have the generator yet, so we don't have. to
Yeah.
have it
we don't have the generator, so why don't
We have
just-
time to do a 1 month bidding process and
Yeah.
see and then make a decision.
That's fine.
What's the downside to that, Bill?
I have to, we'll have to do a design build if we go out to bid, that's all. And there's no downside, I guess. Like I said, my concern was I just wanted one contractor to be responsible for everything, and I'm
I get
concerned
that.
about
Yeah.
bringing somebody else in. Basically, people who do this are generator companies. So when I'm asking to the generator company come in, well, you install the switch, but we give the
Well, They don't
$250,000.
manufacture this generator. Henderson, Huntington manufactured it? Or
No,
the-
but it's like a car dealership, right? Basically, we're buying a Chevy and asking Ford to come fix something to make it work. So I don't, you know what I mean?
I totally get that. I guess if you got another bid and it was a considerable difference, I think that's what we want to understand. So if it's $20,000 less or something,
Sole source tends to be a little more expensive. But I'm
At
not,
times.
question
not always.
is whether it's really sole source.
If you want to wait,
Well,
well,
let's just, when the time, we're not gonna have the generator until the fall.
however long it takes.
okay. Just want to be prepared. We'll go out to bid if that you like.
Okay, so we'll table this today.
But just one further question. Once you decide on if it's Huntington or someone else, how long does it take them to put that in?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get it done now because switchgear and all that stuff is the stuff that's the problem with the supply chain right now.
Yeah.
So I want to have enough time to make sure I got our own place. That's all. They may find it all around the country now. I don't know. It's been hit and miss on a lot of things. I mean, there's certain light bulbs I can't get right now. I mean, it's crazy out there.
Mm.
So,
We table it.
Or table it or encourage them to come back with another bid?
We'll table it for today and.
Yeah, table
Yeah.
and they'll-
Okay.
they'll
yeah,
come back
table and we'll
in a
come,
month
we'll
or
go bid
so
it and
with a
Yeah.
bid.
if you want, we'll do. No problem.
Move to table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Tiger, you're still here for the,
Good morning.
Morning.
So I went out and received 2 quotes for some additional granite material. This is for work on Mead Street. We have to redo the sidewalk on Mead Street as part of the paving project. Some of the granite we'll be able to reuse, some of the granite we won't be able to reuse. Some of it actually is concrete or bituminous, so we need to have a little bit more of a supplies in our yard. So I received 2 quotes, one from Williams, one from North Carolina. The numbers actually on the granite per linear foot were within 10 cents of each other. The only problem is that North Carolina's shipping costs are about $3,500 a load, $3,750 to be precise. They're trying to see what they can do to bring their pricing down, but at present it just takes them out of the mix. So we'd like to go forward with a purchase with Williams Stone for $36,922.60 for 1,600 linear feet of granite curbing.
Hey, Tiger, what percentage of this is installation versus
This
replacement?
is all material. Oh, this is all material cost. This is,
No, excuse me. We're talking about new installation versus replacement. replacement. So what's the delta?
It's 680 feet long in the street, 1,360 feet. It's about 300 feet of new.
No, his point is we have certain projects that are
Right.
brand new sidewalks, or brand new
Oh, this is an existing
installations.
sidewalk. This is an existing sidewalk that we're
I mean,
replacing.
I-
Is that your
This is not
case?
sidewalk. Some roads don't have granite now, and you're installing it for the first time. Others you replace.
Exactly.
Do you ever replace granite? I guess that's.
Do I have to, at times, yes,
Yeah.
but most of the time, no. What we have right now in the contract is we have both the unit price for resetting existing existing granite and installing new granite. It's so that the thought is that we need to have enough material in place if I've got to pull it all out and replace it. But my feeling is that no, normally it's just, sometimes it's offset a little bit. In the past, we hadn't set it in a bed of concrete. We set it in a bed of concrete now. So sometimes they've moved or shifted or leaned over. So they have to be reset. But to date, I've never had to replace the granite. I've only had to reset it at times.
That's helpful.
Sorry, I misunderstood your
That's okay.
question.
This goes for the entire Main Street. Does it have a sidewalk down the entire? part
Both
of
sides of the
both
street,
sides?
almost the entire length. It stops at the driveway to the back side of the view and doesn't go down the last little piece. There's a high embankment there on the northern side of Mead Street. There's a small stretch that doesn't, but
There's no sidewalk at
there is
all.
no. And we looked at that at the time that we did the work, extending the sidewalk on the southern side. We had it designed, but there's a large retaining wall that would need to have to be rebuilt. And there's a large embankment that has what's called stone slope paving on it. Actually looks really quite nice. And we felt it was necessary. We didn't feel it was that we should actually go in and do that work and replace that sidewalk all the way down. The majority of everyone can be serviced on one side of the street or the other. If you want to cut through from South Avenue to Mead Street, you stay on the south side and you can come straight down on South Avenue from South Avenue to Park and get to the park.
Okay.
If you follow
So,
me on
so
that.
it's just, so it's just on one side, you can go.
One side, you can go the entire
length.
length, and the other side, you're one property
it.
short.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, no further questions. I move we approve this request from Public Works to enter into a contract with Williams Stone in the amount of $26,922.60.
36. Sorry,
What did I say?
26.
36,922.60 for the purchase of granite curbing as Tiger described.
I'll second.
Second, further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, Stacy, you've been waiting all this time.
Thank you.
Parking Commission recommended some changes in our business permits and our free permits downtown for employees who work in town. So if you'd explain.
So good morning. Employee business permits will be coming up for renewal on July 1st. So the Parking Commission had two recommendations. The first recommendation was for the annual premier business permits, which come at a cost. They recommended to keep those fees at the current rate of $465.81. Those
Is that
would-
with tax? Is that why? it's-
That's with the tax. So base rate is $438. And then there's 6.35% sales tax that Connecticut added. That would be for the Morse Court, Park Street, and telephone lots. Their second recommendation is to continue with the free employee business permits for the Center School, Locust Avenue, and Richmond Hill lot. The program is going very well. People are very happy with it. In addition to that recommendation to continue with it, the recommendation was to also extend the renewal period to an annual basis instead of a 6-month basis, since the program is going so well and the turnover usually in a 6-month period is not that great. And it does have a tendency to confuse the employees that they have to know to renew every 6 months. Sometimes it gets missed a lot. So that was the additional part of that second recommendation.
How many people are using Richmond Hill?
Number for you. We currently have 62 permits out in that lot,
Free. That's my concern because that's a community.
but
lot.
it's not full at all. It seems like the people that use it are shift work, maybe they're not all in at the same time.
Okay, but
So
my
it's not
concern
full.
is when we get back to normal with commuters, that has, we oversell that lot. How many spaces are there? 55?
86 spaces in that lot,
How many spaces are in the lot altogether?
86.
86.
Yeah.
And we oversell it by how much?
1.5 usually.
So you don't think we're gonna have, if commuting went back to normal and the people that expect to park there?
I'm going to say that right now, it's not a concern. Richmond Hill is usually that lot that a lot of people bypass. They either stay at Talmadge Hill or they go to the lumberyard. And I am continuing making the calls for the lumberyard on the wait list. So a lot of people that are on the Richmond Hill lot list are getting called for the lumberyard. So of course, they're not going to take the Richmond Hill. So that wait list is also decreasing as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, yes, thank you. So on the employees, let's start first, sorry, premium business permits, its current rate. And for all these lots, Morris Park and the telephone lots, where are we percentage wise in terms of usage?
Full. All
Full.
those premier, yes, we
Okay.
are 100%.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And, but we also allow, when commuting starts again, are there commuters using those lots as well? Not for
the
Morris, I guess.
premier. No, not for Morris Park
Okay.
or telephone. Those are
Okay.
strictly business.
Strictly business and
Yes.
they're full.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay. When's the last time that we had changed that rate?
Pre-COVID, I think it was actually pre-COVID, it was 438
Without tax?
without tax. And then the last permit year, which is the current permit year, should I say, we kept it the same, but then the sales tax was added on because the sales tax came about
That's
as
new.
COVID was starting.
Okay.
It's one of our thoughts.
so
that
there was
the sales
one
tax has
period
Now been
before that.
added to
that it
people's
was raised.
costs. So
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
So there was one period before I guess it would be the 2018 permit year was a little bit less
Okay. And we review these every year. So,
every year.
okay.
Yes.
All right. And then on the free employee business permits, Center School, Locust and Richmond, we just talked about Richmond.
Yeah.
They're doing very well. How many employees are taking advantage of this?
Well, when you hear the amount of permits that are out, it sounds a lot, but the lots are still not full. And again, I believe it's because of the shift work. People are not all parking at the same time. So 62 in Richmond, I have 226 out in Center and 245 out in Locust. But on any given day, we are still finding that about 15 to 20 spaces in each lot are still available for parking. So we're not overwhelming those lots at all.
you know, another concern would be if the library is going to open their new building February 1st.
Those spaces, and I checked this morning, right now, the 20 spaces that are being used by the library patrons, we're only seeing about 2 to 3 in the morning, in the afternoon.
But the
when
new
we go out
library is
there.
going to be packed,
Yeah.
the premise, right?
Yeah.
And people are going to have permits for the remainder of till next July. 160 people? How many did you just say for
226?
226.
226?
But yeah,
And,
But-
and the problem is, we're supposed to do a study 1 year after the library opens. I just don't want the library, there's a lot of people that have free permits over in the center school lot. We could shift some of them over perhaps to Locust or Richmond, but I just am a little concerned. We're gonna see the return of commuters and a new library, and we're gonna have a lot of people having rights to parking
well, wasn't it
in the same spots.
when this was all discussed with the library, I thought the usage of the library spots were mostly going to come towards the end of the day. I thought that evening events and so I thought that by the evening time, anybody, even employees could utilize some of the other
But
lots.
keep in mind, the library had on-site parking, and then they used that center school lot. Both the library had, I'm concerned about the 1 year.
How many spaces altogether? Just remind us in the center school
Oh,
lot.
gosh, 172 or 166? 176, okay,
Okay, and of the 176, the library has
76.
76.
You know, could we perhaps, when we communicate the renewal,
Mhm.
say that you have a free permit? But we may reassign you. If you have a center school permit, a center lot
I think
permit,
that's, I think
Good
that's.
we
that's
may
right.
reassign you to the Richmond Hill lot or the Locust lot. So that,
We have to have the ability to
Yeah.
claw back those
Yeah.
spots.
I just think we need to protect the library spaces
Okay.
and not have
Yeah, we
people.
won't know until.
My only
Yeah.
concern
No.
with doing it to the locust lot is that that capacity could overflow as well, but I will certainly put that
You know,
down there.
we're also going to be, likely taking 39 Locust for the police department. And we may need overflow parking for the police employees there. So there's a number of things in motion that could,
Mhm.
Change
so
some of
let's
it.
be sure to communicate that when
Absolutely,
we
sure.
give people 1 year renewals, so we can reassign them.
Okay.
What was I missed what you said on the police department and you said.
We're in
Locust.
negotiations to keep 39 Locust when the Board of Ed vacates in
I see.
February.
Oh,
And
okay.
the entire police department will.
Move there, I see. Okay.
So we will probably bring that agreement in 2 weeks.
Okay. Good.
I want to mention one other thing. Yesterday, I wasn't aware that where are we? April?
Hey.
But the parking commission meeting that opened up Talmadge Hills permits to non-residents. And I wasn't aware of that, because I hadn't read the minutes. I haven't gone to the meeting. But that's a change in policy that should be recommended to the Board of Selectmen as well.
And yes, and apologies, it was a little bit of a learning curve for me as far as knowing what certain things have to be recommended to the parking commission to
And the
recommend to
parking
the board of
commission, unlike
selectmen.
other park boards
And
and
it was
commissions,
something that
says
was in
everything has to be approved by the
2010.
Board of Selectmen. They can make recommendations. And I, quite honestly, we have empty spaces over at Talmadge Hill. So it probably is the right policy, but I just wanted to mention this. Because historically, we had a few legacy. people.
Yes, so back in 2010, we opened it up to non-residents. As soon as we saw that there was more demand by residents and we were going back to a wait list at Talmadge Hill, we stopped the program. And the non-residents that were in the lot at that time, anybody that dropped out was not allowed to come back in. So over the years, we have legacy grandfathered in non-residents. We have 12. So just
We
recently.
have the legacy of 12.
Of legacy of 12, yes. So just recently, one of the non-residents, or actually two of the non-residents had reached out and said the lot is so underutilized. We're walking up to the top 2 tiers, and this was in the winter months where it's very difficult to walk down to the train station if there's snow and stuff. Would you reconsider opening up that lot again to non-residents? I thought it was a wonderful idea because it was so underutilized. So I brought it to the parking commission. Everyone was in favor of it because we felt that it would help the town as well. It brought in extra revenue because it was being used, and it would help our neighbors who lived on the border of the town to have a permit instead of going up to the top 2 tiers, making it difficult. So it was all agreed. It was just, so we re-implemented it, but I missed a step on bringing it to
Well,
you guys.
I think it's perhaps a good idea because that lot will be underutilized until we get to a point where maybe back to normal and commuters are demanding spaces. And actually also with those people, they don't have a right to renewal. I mean, they're.
No, it is all, and they've always been told this is all on the basis of availability. Once we find that the requests by residents start over going back to a wait list, then that program could be stopped at any time.
Right.
So
With no
basically,
grandfathering.
No grandfather.
we can decide if people were still in there, we felt that that wasn't obstructing residents getting in there, or we can just do away with the whole
The
program.
point is the parking commission would bring back a recommendation. for
Yeah,
future
yeah,
change.
yes, yes,
Okay.
I have learned. We will bring back that recommendation.
All right, so I move that we approve these, if there are no further questions,
No.
these
Okay.
changes
Oh,
for
yeah.
the business permit renewals at the same rate for the annual upcoming July renewal. And also the free permits for people who work in town. And as described by Stacy. By the way, with the Richmond Hill lot, we don't have any people parking overnight that are sort of in the neighborhood. They're asking for
Not
permits.
to my knowledge that anybody is staying overnight in that.
Because we
lot.
don't allow parking overnight, right, in any of the lots? Except for lumberyard, we have a few spaces that say overnight parking is permitted.
Technically, they don't allow overnight, but occasionally somebody would request
Yeah.
that if they leave the car
Yeah.
overnight, we don't have a problem with a few days here and there. If it's seen that there is a reoccurrence, then we would reach out to that person. We don't want people technically what we call storing their vehicles in any of the
Yeah.
lots. But if somebody needs to for a day, 2 days,
Yeah, I suppose there
we
may be
will
some
allow it.
overnight parking at Richmond Hill that I observe anyway. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
if they're there after 5 o'clock and they leave before 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's always been
Yeah.
kind of an unwritten.
But that's mainly concerned with snow removal and not having.
Snow
people.
removal and things like that, yes, and that's why
Okay.
it's.
I second the motion.
Second and further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thank
Next
you.
overpayments is one real estate and a handful of 10 automobile. Any? I move we approve those refunds of the tax overpayments.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contracts under 10,000.
Yeah. No
No
questions.
questions? Okay.
No questions here.
That brings us to Selectmen's comments. I would make a few comments today. One, first of all, I got a lot of emails, text messages, calls with well wishes and prayers for the event that occurred on Easter Sunday morning. And as I told the town council, I was very, very fortunate to get immediate ambulance service to this Stanford Hospital, and also Stanford Hospital gave me immediate treatment. So my damage from the stroke is very limited. And but I do really appreciate everyone's well wishes.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Secondly, COVID. When I was at Stanford Hospital, Dr. Reed reported there was only one patient in Stanford Hospital with COVID, or a COVID patient. You know, they always so that that's the standard now that we're looking at the severity of COVID. The hospitals are hospitalization. We're green in the CDC's way of measuring today. Now, I just read today that Zumbucks is closed because of apparently staff unavailability with COVID. So it's still out there, but we continue our vaccination clinics and our booster clinics. And so there's not much to say about COVID. Thirdly, yesterday I started to read the comment letter we got on our affordable housing 830J plan. And I think we have a call at 10:30 on the subject with the town attorney. But we plan to bring that to the selectmen in 2 weeks. Plan, which is due by June 1st. So I perhaps will have you talk to the town attorney as to where this all stands.
Great. I will.
Based upon the comments letter, which is comments were submitted by the same lawyer that's representing the developer on Wheaton Hill.
Have we received a copy of this?
I just printed it out yesterday. Where did?
The comments
The
from.
830J comments that were.
Think we are.
Tim Hollister. How did I get this? Maybe I got an email from Lynn in preparation for this call. But anyway, I think this was reported on by Michael Dine this
Yeah,
morning.
Mike's got it.
So, and then finally, I'd like to make a comment about something that Nick raised 2 weeks ago. And I just want to clarify one thing. On the legal bills 2 weeks ago, there was an item for ethics board filings, which I want to point out has nothing to do with the ethics board complaint that's been on file against me since last November 1st. That matter was resolved by the ethics board within a few weeks, and but the town attorney represented the town employee there, so that matter was disposed of. On the other hand, the ethics board met last Wednesday for the 8th meeting and 12 hours of deliberation on a letter that I wrote last October supporting the Republican slated candidates, and mailed by the RTC, Republican Town Committee. And basically last week, they concluded there's no ethics code violations. This has not gotten a lot of press except by Mr. Dinan, who's managed to make several articles out of something that initially was confidential, but also conveniently, Mike manages to attend meetings at night that he otherwise wouldn't attend. And so this has been a bit of a show. I think the whole thing has been rather disappointing and certainly a disservice to me. I received a bill yesterday for $7,500 for personal legal expenses that I'm not happy with. And I think this whole matter has been mishandled in many ways. So I also would make the comment that never in the future should a ethics board complaint be processed without the advice of independent legal counsel against an elected official or perhaps anyone in town's office. So I just want to make those comments on that. And I would also make the comment, I think Ms. Corbett's role in this was in many ways improper, and I think that will come out in due course. So those are my comments.
I wasn't going to come on that, but I can. So one of the things that your suggestion, Kevin, which I think is a good one, would be adopted either into the ethics board. You and I
Authored
authored it.
you and
So
I
we know
authored
that,
the
yeah.
ethics code, the
So
ethics board.
I think
ordinance.
that would be a good amendment to the charter for that particular board, which would obviously go through the town council, the ordinance committee, and so forth. So I think it probably hasn't been amended since we first
No,
drafted
it was.
It has had actually.
It was
one
actually the month before I took office. We town council, you and I think both approved the changes that were done in 2017.
right, when the new board came aboard. So I think that's good. I think every board and commission that has changes as things go forward throughout history, I think it's an important time to always review those and make the changes as necessary, as well as I think it's important for people to know that they have the right to submit as provided by the ethics board if they feel it's appropriate. And what's required is whether or not there is a review by somebody who can attest. And as you know, there was two that had taken a look at what was submitted, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you want to, I know this is not something that you're encouraging people not to consider if that's their right as well. So I appreciate that. And I'm sorry that you have had to go through that. And I think that's potentially something you want to look at in terms of coverage, et cetera.
No, that's, the point is, since the ethics code only covers acts in government service, and I've been advised by the town attorney that I can't be reimbursed by the town, and I can't be reimbursed by the RTC. So I will anyway.
Well, that's again something that I think ought to be considered as part of the ethics board charter, as well as something to prevent going forward. So I think that's something that we all live through. So I'll just obviously you want to comment too, Nick. So let me just say the only other item I had was on the Vine Cottage, and I think 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago we talked about that. Just a timing on that. Did we go forward with when we expect we will move the folks from the health department.
Oh, as far as moving them,
Yeah, and then starting the project.
we were looking at a June, July timeframe.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
You know, the point that I made 2 weeks ago with respect to the ethics, I think you guys agree with me that, you know, look, you learn from your mistakes. And I think going forward, this isn't for us to do. This is town council and you guys, former members. So again, I would just encourage town council to, as our legislative branch, to look at that ordinance and make it better. You know, and the situation that you've been put in has been really difficult. I'm sorry that you're out of pocket real money. I mean, this is, I don't know why this process has taken as long as it has. It's like, you know, it's not Watergate for crip's sakes. This is crazy.
Any further comments? If not, I move we adjourn at 10:41.
Second motion.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay.
This is our longest meeting ever.